Brandon, a gentleman of respectable age with a modest appearance and simple attire, was approaching a five-star hotel. Wearing a faded coat and pants that had seen better days, along with shoes worn from hard, constant work, Brandon contemplated the hotel from across the street. The facade boasted a modern and elegant design, inviting high-caliber guests from around the world. Determined to enter, Brandon crossed the pedestrian crosswalk, reaching the automatic doors that opened to reveal the interior of the hotel. The lobby, a true spectacle of design, featured a polished marble floor that reflected the lights from chandeliers hanging from the high ceiling. Exotic plants and contemporary artworks added a touch of life to the predominantly neutral environment. The reception was attended by a young and elegant woman whose formal attire contrasted sharply with the simplicity of Brandon's clothes. With her upright posture and professional expression, she seemed the embodiment of efficiency and courtesy. However, upon noticing Brandon approaching, her expression briefly changed to one of surprise and skepticism. Eyeing him from top to bottom, the receptionist quickly assessed that Brandon's worn appearance did not align with the standards usually expected by the establishment's guests. Brandon, noticing the scrutiny, was not intimidated. He walked up to the counter with the dignity of someone accustomed to being underestimated. His voice was firm and calm as he greeted the receptionist and requested a room for the night. As he spoke, he pulled an aged leather wallet from his back pocket, which, despite being worn, was meticulously organized with a credit card and some essential documents. Nothing ostentatious or wealthy, but enough to cover his needs. The receptionist hesitated, her professional instinct clashing with her initial prejudice. She glanced at the reservation system on the computer briefly, internally debating how to proceed, before informing Brandon, with a hesitant excuse, that the hotel was completely booked despite the visible vacancies on her screen. Brandon, with a resilient posture and a patience that only many years of life can teach, observed the receptionist's badge as she repeated that all the rooms were occupied. "Kate," he began, his voice laden with exhaustion and a faint note of plea. "I've been through a lot to get here. I'm no longer able to wander the city looking for a room, and I'm sure there's availability here." He discreetly pointed to the row of access cards that lay behind Kate, each meticulously aligned next to a room number, clearly unused. Kate, now visibly cornered by Brandon's astute observation, felt the need to be frank. She sighed before explaining, trying to maintain her professional composure. "Sir, please understand. This is a luxury hotel. We cater to an exclusive clientele who usually arrive by car or executive taxi, not on foot like you. We have a reputation to maintain and cannot simply host someone who might compromise that image." Brandon listened to each word with a resigned calmness, but his eyes reflected growing disappointment and a glimpse of sadness over the treatment he was receiving. "All I want is a place to rest. It can even be the simplest room, with the worst view. It doesn't matter," he insisted, his voice emphasizing that his needs were modest. However, Kate, still bound by the hotel's protocols, held her position. "That's not how things work here," she replied firmly. Brandon, not wanting to give up, asked to speak to someone with higher authority, hoping perhaps for greater understanding or flexibility in the rules. It was then that Tyler, the hotel supervisor, appeared. He approached with a rigid and formal posture, not extending his hand or offering a welcoming gesture. Kate quickly reported the situation, and Tyler, fixing his eyes on Brandon's, maintained an unshakable expression. The encounter between Brandon and Tyler was about to define the course of this standoff. Tyler approached Brandon with an authoritative and formal posture. He did not extend his hand, maintaining a professional distance as he assessed the situation. "Sir, I understand there might be some misunderstanding," Tyler began, carefully measuring his words. "Unfortunately, we cannot accommodate you under these circumstances. There is a hotel a few blocks from here, less exclusive, that might be able to serve you." Brandon listened attentively, with a serene expression. He knew he was not being treated with the respect he deserved, but decided to face the situation with dignity. "I'm not looking for charity," he calmly replied. "I just need a room for the night, and I know there is availability here." Tyler, trying to maintain control of the situation in front of other guests and employees, insisted, "Sir, please understand. Our hotel follows certain standards, and unfortunately, you do not fit them at the moment." Brandon looked around, noticing the curious glances of other guests. "I understand your standards, but I don't believe appearance should determine the service a person receives," he countered, his voice firm but not raised. Tyler, realizing that the situation could escalate and affect the hotel's reputation, opted for a more discreet approach. "If you would follow me, we'll try to resolve this in another way," he suggested, indicating to Brandon to follow him to a more private location, away from the eyes of other guests. During the walk to a more private space, Tyler called a security guard, discreetly asking him to escort Brandon to the back exit of the hotel. Tyler's decision to route Brandon through the service entrance revealed an attempt to avoid further embarrassment, both for the hotel and for Brandon. Although the choice was questionable in terms of respect and human dignity, as the security guard, a man of robust stature and serious expression, led Brandon through the hotel, the elderly man's indignation was palpable. He repeated with a mix of sadness and firmness in his voice that everyone was making a grave mistake, and that he only wanted a chance to speak with management to clarify the situation. But his words seemed to fall on deaf ears, as he was led not through the main entrance, but down a less visible corridor that led to the hotel service area. Arriving at the back of the hotel, an unusual scene unfolded. Karen, in charge of the laundry, was busy with the washing machines when she noticed the security guard's approach with Brandon. The sight of the elderly man being handled so roughly by a clearly younger and stronger security guard shocked Karen. Without hesitation, she intervened, demanding that the security stop immediately. "Why are you treating him like this? And why is he being led out the back?" Karen questioned, her voice full of surprise and disapproval. The security guard, although firm in his duty, respected Karen and recognized her authority in that area of the hotel. He released Brandon, justifying his action as merely following orders. "I'm just following the supervisor's instructions. If you disagree, speak with management," he replied, his expression revealing discomfort with the situation. Karen, however, was not satisfied with the response. She looked at Brandon, now free from the security guard's grasp, and said resolutely that the service area was under her jurisdiction and that she would take charge of the situation. "From now on, he is my responsibility," she declared, giving a challenging look to the security guard who, without arguing further, left the scene, muttering that it was now her problem. Brandon, still trying to catch his breath and dignity, looked at Karen with gratitude. She, noticing the discomfort and injustice Brandon had suffered, decided not only to offer him a temporary refuge, but also to seek a way to resolve the situation fairly. Meanwhile, Brandon reflected on the unexpected kindness of Karen, which contrasted sharply with the treatment he had previously received, and began to explain his situation, hopeful that he might still find justice and respect within the walls of the hotel that initially seemed so welcoming. Karen, seeing that Brandon was in some pain, approached him, extending an aspirin. "You can call me Brandon," he replied with a sigh of exhaustion as he gently accepted the medication. Grateful for the simple act of care, he watched Karen, whose kindness seemed to be a light on this tumultuous day. After the brief episode with the aspirin, Karen casually mentioned that her shift at the hotel had ended and that she was just waiting for her husband to go home. At that moment, two housekeepers passing by, noticing Brandon's presence next to Karen, didn't miss the opportunity to make a jocular comment. They laughed and teased Karen, sarcastically suggesting she was trading her husband for Brandon, describing the situation exaggeratedly as hitting rock bottom. Karen, although accustomed to the banter of her colleagues, felt a bit embarrassed but did not show it. "Oh, aren't you too funny, huh? Get back to work," she retorted, dispersing the housekeepers with a quick reply and a wave of her hand. The housekeepers moved away, still laughing, leaving Karen and Brandon alone again. Brandon, who had smiled at the cheeky comment, but noticed that Karen seemed a bit disturbed by the housekeeper's remark, gently inquired about her husband after the two had moved away. Karen took a deep breath, looking at Brandon with a mix of openness and a hint of sadness, ready to share her personal story. "My husband, Henry, Karen began, pausing for a moment to gather her words. Henry was like anyone else, full of life and plans. But everything changed drastically one day, when he was hit by a driver who ran a red light. She explained that the impact was so severe that Henry suffered serious injuries, resulting in the loss of one of his legs. They rushed him to the hospital, and the doctors did what they could, but his leg was beyond any possibility of saving. It was amputated. Karen continued, her voice firm but clearly laden with emotion as she recalled those difficult moments. Karen shared how Henry dealt with the loss. "You know, he never broke down, even in that moment. He was sad, of course, but always grateful to still be alive. He says he still has a lot to live for, despite everything." Her face showed a mix of pride and concern for her husband who, despite adversity, continued to face life with hope. She also talked about life before the accident. Henry grew up without knowing his father and lost his mother to cancer when he was still a teenager. He spent a lot of time in a foster home before he could stabilize himself. Karen described how he had worked hard to overcome his difficult past, finishing his studies and finding in her a partner with whom to build a new life. "After we got married, we pooled our savings to buy our small house on the outskirts and the car he uses to work as a ride-share driver," she concluded, showing how, despite the challenges, they had built a life together based on effort and love. Brandon listened attentively, his expression now a mix of empathy and respect. He recognized in Karen and her husband the same dignity he sought for himself. The conversation between them not only served to break down barriers of prejudice, but also to create a bond of mutual understanding and respect for human struggle and dignity, regardless of external circumstances or others' perceptions. She smiled slightly as she mentioned the small and simple house where they lived on the outskirts of the city, and the popular car they had acquired with years of saving and sacrifice. At that moment, the conversation was interrupted by the sound of a car approaching. It was Henry, coming to pick up Karen from work. Brandon, who had listened attentively to the couple's story of overcoming challenges, felt a deep respect for both. Henry's arrival gave Brandon a chance to meet the man he had heard so much about. When Henry arrived at the hotel to pick up Karen, Brandon was still with them, waiting to resolve his situation at the hotel. While Karen was finishing her tasks, Henry and Brandon had the opportunity to talk briefly in the car, a moment that allowed Henry to see the exhaustion and discomfort of Brandon, who did not have a place to spend the night. Realizing the situation, Henry looked at Karen as soon as she got into the car, and after an understanding exchange of glances between the couple, Karen turned to Brandon with a welcoming expression. "Brandon," she began hesitantly as if searching for the right words. "It looks like you've had a really tough day, and we don't want you to have to worry about where you'll stay tonight." Henry nodded, supporting Karen's idea. "Why don't you come home with us?" he suggested gently. "It's not much, but we'll be happy to share our space with you. At least you can rest and decide your next steps with a clear head." Brandon, visibly touched by the couple's generosity, initially hesitated, not wanting to impose, but the sincerity in Karen and Henry's eyes was comforting. "I'm really grateful," responded Brandon, his voice low but full of gratitude. "I accept your kind offer. Thank you, truly." With that, they left the hotel together, heading to Karen and Henry's modest but welcoming home. This night would not only provide Brandon a safe place to rest, but also strengthen an unexpected bond between people who had been strangers just a few hours earlier. Brandon, after the turbulent experience at the hotel, found himself immersed in a completely different atmosphere as he followed Karen and Henry to the car. Karen's unexpected offer to visit her home emerged as a haven from the chaos, and although initially hesitant due to fatigue and the unresolved situation at the hotel, the kindness and humanity that Karen and Henry displayed convinced him to accept the invitation. During the drive to the house, Brandon observed the way Henry maneuvered the adapted car. The skill with which Henry drove, despite his physical disability, was impressive and reflected his resilient spirit. Henry talked in an easy and natural way, creating a warm and relaxed environment in the car. He did not complain about the adversities he faced. On the contrary, he maintained a positive attitude, even joking about his need to exercise more, despite the obvious difficulties that would entail. Upon arriving at Karen and Henry's modest home on the outskirts of the city, Brandon was greeted with warm hospitality that only reinforced the admiration he already felt for the couple. The house, although simple, was a home full of care and life, where each object seemed to have a story to tell. The hours they spent talking unfolded naturally, and time seemed to flow differently there. Karen, sensitive and attentive, noticed that Brandon might be needing more than just a few hours of rest. She kindly offered that he spend the night, considering he might not have another place to go at that moment. Brandon, touched by the couple's generosity and feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time, accepted the offer. The night found Brandon sleeping on the old sofa in the living room, which, despite its age, was surprisingly comfortable. While he slept, he reflected on the twists life takes and how sometimes, amid difficulties, we find kindness and understanding in unexpected places. The experience provided Brandon not only with a physical refuge, but also emotional, allowing him to reassess the importance of human relationships and the capacity for empathy and mutual support that still exist in a world often indifferent. Brandon, with the posture of someone who had spent the night reflecting on his situation, followed Karen and Henry back to the hotel, determined to resolve the conflict he had faced. Although Karen was worried about the possibility of an even greater confrontation, Brandon entered through the back of the hotel with a new purpose. He was determined not to let the injustice of the previous day repeat itself. Upon arriving at the lobby, he saw Kate conversing with a woman elegantly dressed, identified by her badge as Lisa, the hotel manager. The moment Brandon approached was tense, with Kate clearly disturbed to see him again. in an even more disheveled state than the day before. She quickly excused herself from the manager and approached Brandon, already warning him that he needed to leave. However, Brandon's intervention was swift and direct, ignoring Kate and addressing Lisa immediately. His speech was firm and carried authority, revealing a surprising twist. He was in a much more influential position than his initial appearance suggested. "Lisa, how are you managing things around here? I was one step away from giving you a promotion, putting you in charge of more hotels in our network. But it seems that these people here have no idea who they work for." The revelation of Brandon as someone significant within the hotel chain completely changed the dynamics of the conversation. Lisa, who until then appeared composed and confident, paled in face of the implications of what Brandon was saying. The accusation of poor management and her team's unawareness of the identity of one of the company's top executives was serious. The situation forced Lisa to reevaluate not only the hotel's approach to guest treatment, but also its hospitality policies and judgment based on appearances. With his position revealed, Brandon now had Lisa's full attention, who needed to act quickly to correct the mistake and possibly save her own position and reputation within the company. Brandon continued explaining that his disheveled appearance was due to volunteering at an animal shelter and that he had chosen the hotel because it was one of the closest when he found himself without a cell phone to call a car. He emphasized that the treatment he had received was unacceptable, not just because he was the owner, but because every person deserved respect and consideration, regardless of their appearance. Lisa agreed, visibly shaken and committed to making changes. Brandon then declared that there would be a complete review of the hotel's customer service practices and that everyone's positions would be reconsidered. He highlighted Karen's attitude, who had shown compassion and humanity, as an example of the kind of behavior he valued and expected from all his employees. Brandon continued, stating that situations like this served as a critical reminder that a hotel's stars do not just reflect its luxury or service, but also how it treats people. He made it clear that he expected to see significant improvements, and that he would be closely monitoring to ensure that changes were implemented. "As for you, Kate," Brandon said, looking at her firmly, "part of what we need here is a real understanding of what it means to be in each role at this hotel. You misjudged not just a guest, but the owner, based solely on outward appearance. But more profoundly, this reveals a lack of respect and empathy for the different journeys of the people who come through our doors." Lisa listened attentively, knowing that Brandon's next words would outline the consequences and measures to be taken. Brandon continued, "Therefore, I think it will be beneficial for you to spend some time working in the service area. There, you won't wear nice clothes, jewelry, high heels, or makeup. This is not a punishment, but rather an opportunity for you to understand and respect the hard and essential work our service team performs every day." Kate, visibly uncomfortable and perhaps a bit humiliated by the proposal, attempted to protest. "But this would make me feel humiliated, demeaned. It's unacceptable," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. Brandon, maintaining his calm, responded firmly, "Do you mean to say that being a cook, cleaner, and housekeeper is humiliating? Do you think these people are beneath you? Know that they are very dignified. And punishment is what you inflict on all of us with your arrogance. The only thing unacceptable here is your lack of humility." Kate, still resistant and shaken by the possibility of working in the service area, asked for a moment to think. Brandon agreed, giving her some time to reflect on the offer and its implications. he made it clear that the decision to accept or reject the internship proposal would be crucial in determining her future at the hotel. Those words made it clear that the experience would be a way for Kate to gain perspective and perhaps redemption by experiencing the reality of colleagues she had underestimated. Brandon looked at Lisa, indicating that he expected her to implement this measure as part of the effort to reshape the hotel's service culture. The experience was intended not just to adjust Kate's behavior, but also to strengthen the team as a whole, promoting a deeper and more respectful understanding of all roles within the hotel. Lisa, the manager, supported Brandon's decision, recognizing that the situation had revealed a significant flaw in the hotel's service culture. She intervened, saying, "Kate, we failed as a team by not recognizing and valuing every guest. This is an opportunity for us to grow as professionals and as individuals." Regarding Karen, Brandon expressed his deep gratitude and recognition for her exemplary behavior. He announced that she would receive a raise and a promotion for her ability to maintain dignity and humanity in dealing with guests, demonstrating the fundamental values he wished to see in all employees of the hotel chain. Meanwhile, Brandon, more determined than ever to implement significant changes in the way the hotel operated, began to outline plans for empathy training, aimed at all levels of staff to ensure that the incident did not repeat and that the hotel could truly offer a five-star experience to all its guests. The impact of Brandon's words still resonated in the hotel. Brandon's direct approach not only made everyone reconsider their views on the various roles within the hotel, but also the importance of treating all people with respect and dignity, regardless of their status or role. After the events at the hotel, the day continued, and Karen and Henry's life returned to its normal routine. However, a surprise awaited them at the end of an apparently ordinary day. A well-dressed man in a suit and tie appeared at the door of their modest home. He introduced himself politely, explaining that he was there on behalf of Brandon. Karen, already aware of who Brandon really was, the owner of the hotel where she worked, felt a mix of surprise and anxiety at seeing a representative of his at her door. The man began by conveying Brandon's gratitude for the kindness Karen had shown, highlighting how her actions had made a deep impression on him. He then proceeded with the news that Brandon had sent. Henry would receive a high-quality leg prosthesis and physical therapy to help with his pains and improve his mobility. Additionally, the couple would receive a new house, more spacious, and in a more convenient location near the city's commercial area. This house would make it easier for both Henry to get to work and Karen to get to the hotel. Finally, the representative made an offer that could significantly change Karen's life. Brandon wanted to fund an intensive management course for Karen. The goal was to prepare her to take on a leadership position at the hotel, recognizing her innate management skills and empathy. Karen and Henry listened in astonishment, hardly believing the generosity of the offers. They were deeply grateful and moved to be recognized in such a substantial way. The representative explained that Brandon believed that acts of kindness and humanity like theirs were rare and extremely valuable in a world often indifferent and selfish. Recognizing the impact that such changes would have on their lives, Karen and Henry accepted the offers with hearts full of gratitude. They knew that this would not only improve their living conditions, but also give them the chance to grow and contribute even more significantly to the community around them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.